The first tremor was so subtle that most of the base mistook it for a small earthquake. San Diego had them often enough, the kind that rattled glass and passed within seconds. But this one was different. The ground didn't shake. It lurched, as if gravity had blinked and corrected itself. Captain Kelly Bryant was in the radar control room when the lights flickered once, twice, and then dimmed to the emergency glow. The main screen, a composite of air and sea traffic, went blank. A low hum from the diesel backup kicked in, filling the silence like a heartbeat. "Power failure?" Bryant asked. "No, sir," Lieutenant Perez said, already bent over the terminal. "System's live, but the inputs are gone. We're not receiving returns from the west sector. Not a single one that wasn't possible. Even during maintenance, the Pacific radar net always left some overlap." But when Bryant stepped to the secondary monitor, the truth spread across the map in quiet horror. Half the coastline was black. Then came the second tremor. It wasn't an explosion, no sound, no heat signature, just a pulse through the floor like the base had been struck by the hand of a god. "Dockyard sensors offline," Perez said. "Dry docks 3 through 7, wait." "What? They're just gone." Bryant turned toward him sharply. "Gone as in destroyed?" Perez hesitated. "Gone as in they don't exist anymore. The return echoes. Nothing but sea level." Bryant felt his throat tighten. He walked quickly through the bunker corridors, boots echoing on the steel grating, and climbed the access ladder to the surface. The night air was still. The ocean beyond the base fence looked calm, indifferent, but where the massive silhouettes of naval ships should have lined the water, there was only an empty void. He blinked once, then twice, trying to reconcile it. The docks were there yesterday. The Kearsarge was there yesterday. Hundreds of sailors, engineers, supplies. Now the water reflected a perfect mirror of the moon, undisturbed. No fire, no debris, just absence. Back in the bunker, the comms room buzzed with panic. Every channel, Navy, NORAD, Homeland Command, was flooded with static. Short bursts of voices, then silence. Someone shouted about impacts near Pearl Harbor, another about a blackout in Seattle. Bryant pressed the headset tighter against his ear. "This is Captain Kelly Bryant, Naval Base San Diego, Sector Echo 7. We've sustained kinetic strikes on dry docks and radar assets. We need confirmation. Are we under attack?" The answer came through heavy distortion. "Multiple orbital insertions. Impacts global. Targets non-human origin. Maintain position." And then the channel went dead. The entire room froze. For the first time in his career, Bryant couldn't read the situation. Not the enemy, not the intent, not the scale. The data wasn't just incomplete. It was being erased in real time. He moved to the tactical table. "Show me the satellite feed," he said. An image appeared, lagging and fragmented, a grainy view from an upper atmosphere relay. A luminous object hung above the curvature of the Earth, distant but vast. It wasn't reflecting sunlight. It was bending it, scattering it in a thin halo. Someone whispered, "Is that ATLAS?" Bryant didn't answer. His eyes traced the object's shadow line, the slow rotation, the deliberate geometry. Whatever it wasn't debris. It was controlled, intelligent, and it had chosen its targets with surgical precision. Hours passed. Reports came in broken bursts. Bremerton, neutralized. Long Beach, offline. NORAD tracking, lost. No pattern of human warfare, no occupation, no invasion. Just infrastructure collapsing, piece by piece. Every hit disconnected another artery of logistics. Supply ports, refueling stations, communications hubs. They weren't aiming for people. They were dismantling capability. By morning, the Pacific command grid had shrunk to a handful of isolated outposts. The screens flickered between static and silence. The only reliable power came from the generators in the bunker. In the dim light, Bryant stood before his remaining officers. None spoke. The air smelled faintly of oil and metal. Someone had scrawled on the whiteboard near the comms desk, "No one fights a ghost in orbit." He looked at it, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and picked up a marker. Carefully, without saying a word, he crossed out the word ghost and wrote a new one, surgeon. For the first time since the impact, he allowed himself to think it out loud. "This isn't an attack," he said quietly. "It's an operation." Perez swallowed hard. "An operation for what, sir?" Bryant stared at the dead radar map. "To remove us?" Cleanly outside, the Pacific stayed still, a flat, mirror-smooth ocean under a foreign sky. By the 6th day, San Diego no longer looked like a city. It looked like an echo, the skeleton of something erased too precisely to call it war. Captain Kelly Bryant stood on what used to be the observation deck of the command post. The coastline stretched out under a haze of burnt salt and drifting dust. No fires burned, no sirens screamed. Everything had gone quiet after the 5th strike. He could still see where the docks had been, perfect circular depressions cut into the ground like molds for ships that no longer existed. The rest of the harbor was a static reflection, an unbroken mirror of sky. Atlas hadn't struck again in hours, maybe days. It was impossible to tell. The sun rose and set, the sea remained flat, and the stars at night had new unfamiliar movements. There was no command, no chain of communication. The emergency network they'd called Echo Spine had gone dark after the first orbital blackout. Satellites either lost or deorbited. The only messages left came from passing aircraft that never arrived and bases that no longer answered. Bryant's unit, what was left of it, had 18 people, Marines, engineers, medics. The rest had died in the first wave or simply vanished during patrols. They kept to the shadows, moving between what remained of the hangars and the supply yard. The base still had fuel for a few vehicles, but not much else. They used the night to search for food, batteries, clean water, and any sign of human contact. They didn't find any. Lieutenant Perez was keeping a log by hand now, paper, pencil, everything analog. He sat under a broken awning, scribbling by the dim light of a flashlight. When Bryant passed, Perez looked up. "No change, sir," he said. "Still no signals west or north. Power's down in the city, nothing moving on infrared. It's like..." "Like what?" Bryant asked. "Like the world stopped making noise." Bryant said nothing. Later that night, he went down to the old radio room. The equipment was mostly useless, but one handheld shortwave still worked on battery. He set it to scan and leaned back in the chair, eyes half closed. The static went on for hours, a dull, endless hiss. Then a faint voice cut through it. "This is Command Sierra. Do you copy? Targeting not civilian. They're disabling logistics. Repeat, not extermination. Over." Then the signal dissolved into white noise again. Bryant sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. The voice had sounded far away, female, calm in the way of people who already know they're losing. It confirmed everything he'd begun to suspect. The enemy, whatever Atlas was, wasn't trying to kill them, not yet. It was isolating them, breaking the system, not the soldiers. Cut the arteries, and the body dies by itself. At dawn, Sergeant Miller came looking for him. The man's face was smeared with soot, eyes red from exhaustion. "Sir, got something," he said. "Drone feed from before the blackout." We pulled it off a local cache. Bryant followed him into the mess hall, where they'd repurposed a laptop using salvaged solar panels. The video showed a view from a recon drone flying over the Pacific. At first, there was only the curve of the ocean, then a shape, faint, metallic, the size of a mountain gliding through the upper atmosphere. It wasn't glowing. It wasn't launching anything. It was just there, moving, watching. "Jesus," Miller whispered. "That's it, isn't it?" Atlas Bryant watched the image in silence. The way it moved, slow, deliberate, economical, told him everything he needed to know. It wasn't random destruction. It was disassembly. When the battery finally died, they both sat in the dark, listening to the empty hum of the generator. "Command says we're to regroup at Edwards Air Base," Miller said finally. "They've got surviving units up there. Might be supplies. Maybe a link to NORAD orders?" Bryant asked. "Those were the orders before the blackout." "No new ones," since Bryant exhaled slowly, the air heavy with dust and salt. "We'll move at dawn." "Keep the convoy small. 1 truck, 2 bikes. Anything more makes us a target." "Yes, sir." When Miller left, Bryant stayed a while longer, looking out through the shattered window at the dark horizon. The air smelled like rust and ozone. Somewhere far above, he thought he saw a flicker of motion, a brief streak of silver moving against the stars. He remembered the way the voice on the radio had said it, not extermination. He wasn't sure which was worse, an enemy that wanted them dead, or one that simply didn't care if they lived. By morning, the truck was packed. Rations, ammo, fuel, whatever batteries they could scavenge. The men and women stood in silence as the sun rose over the dead base. "Captain," Perez said, "permission to ask?" "Go ahead." "Why do you think they left us? They hit everything else. Why not finish us off?" Bryant didn't answer right away. He watched the light creep across the shattered docks, the still surface of the water, the eerie mechanical precision of the emptiness. "They didn't leave us," he said finally. "They just don't need to anymore." He climbed into the truck, started the engine, and for the first time in a week, the sound of a human machine echoed across the base. Weak, defiant, almost swallowed by the silence of a world that had already begun to forget itself. The convoy moved north at dawn. 1 truck, 2 motorcycles, 18 Marines, and a silence heavy enough to crush a thought. The wheels rolled through what used to be Highway 5, the asphalt peeled and smooth, stripped clean by something far more precise than fire or erosion. The signs were gone, the guardrails were gone, even the paint gone. Only gray ribbon and sky. Bryant sat in the passenger seat, rifle across his knees, map unfolded on his thigh. The map was useless now, a relic from when geography had meaning. Towns that once existed were just blank spaces, coordinates that no longer returned echoes. Miller drove. He didn't talk. None of them did. By noon, they reached the outskirts of Camp Pendleton. The gates were open, bent at perfect angles. Beyond them, the base stretched wide and empty. Hangars flattened into smooth depressions, barracks erased without rubble. Like the buildings had been gently lifted away. They stopped at the old airfield. Dust settled around the tires. The sound of the engine dying was louder than gunfire. Perez climbed out first, scanning the horizon with binoculars. "Nothing," he said. "No heat, no movement, no—" He stopped. "Sir, look at the runway." Bryant stepped forward. The concrete stretched before them, perfectly level, except for one detail. Across the entire length, faint and deliberate, were shallow parallel grooves, as if a giant had dragged its fingers through sand. "They hit it from orbit," Miller said. "Kinetic impact again?" Bryant shook his head slowly. "No, this wasn't a strike. It's calibration. They're measuring something." "Measuring what?" Bryant didn't answer. He didn't know. But deep down, he had the sense that humanity had stopped being the subject of the equation. They'd become the variables. They spent the night there, inside what was left of a hangar. The roof had been sheared clean off, the steel edges melted smooth. They made a fire out of old pallets. The flames cast long, fragile shadows over the concrete. Perez sat nearby, flipping through his notebook. Names, coordinates, the last known positions of bases that didn't exist anymore. "Sir," he said quietly, "when do we stop trying to report?" "There's no one left to hear it." Bryant stared into the fire. "We keep doing it," he said, "because that's what we do. Even if it doesn't matter, especially if it doesn't." For a while no one spoke. The fire cracked softly, throwing sparks into the night. Somewhere above, faint and cold, a silver line drifted across the stars. At dawn, the radio came alive. It startled them, a burst of static, then a voice, distorted and trembling, but real. "All remaining sector commands, disengage, repeat, disengage, regroup, if possible." Then another sound, a low, resonant hum that wasn't from the radio. It came from above, deep and physical, vibrating in the chest. They ran outside. The sky was clear and too bright. And there it was, Atlas, visible now with the naked eye, hanging low, massive and deliberate, reflecting the sunrise like a blade. It was descending, not crashing, not attacking, just lowering itself into a new position. Perez whispered, "Jesus Christ." Bryant didn't move. He was transfixed, not by the sight, but by the order of it, the cold geometry, the perfect stillness of a structure that shouldn't exist, the way it moved without urgency, as though time itself was its weapon. Behind him, Miller's voice broke the silence. "Sir, what do we do?" Bryant looked at his men, tired faces, eyes hollow from days of surviving without purpose. There were no orders left, no command, no war. He walked to the edge of the airfield and looked out at the horizon where the ocean began. It was calm, metallic, reflecting the shape of the ship above. For a moment, he remembered what it used to look like. The harbor alive with ships, voices over loudspeakers, the smell of diesel and salt. A world that made noise, a world that existed. Now it was just silence and symmetry. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "We didn't lose." Perez frowned. "Sir?" Bryant's gaze stayed fixed on the sky. "We weren't defeated. We were removed. Someone decided we didn't fit the equation anymore." He turned then, looking at his people, 18 left, soldiers of a nation that no longer had coordinates. "If this is the end, it'll remember we were here. Even if no one else does." The hum deepened. The light grew, not sudden, not violent, just unbearably bright. Shadows thinned, the air trembled, and for a fleeting second, the whole world seemed weightless. Bryant felt warmth spread across his skin, a final surge of sunlight before everything became white. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just kept watching the sky as it folded in on itself, clean, mathematical, final. And then there was nothing, only stillness, only silence, only the perfect, endless line of the horizon, as if the world had been erased with precision. The equation balanced.